back to Dear Premed, the podcast dedicated to helping aspiring physicians navigate toward their journey to medical school. I'm your host, Melody Tran, and today we are taking a deep dive into creating your personalized medical school roadmap. To guide us through this critical topic, I'm thrilled to welcome our special guest, Mr. Hamilton Robert, a pre-medical advisor here at the University of Houston. Welcome, Mr. Robert.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, well, we're so excited to have you join us. Let's get into it. The journey of medical school can feel overwhelming and with all the step and like requirements. Can you start by giving us an overview of what a typical medical school roadmap looks like?
As far as a typical roadmap, everyone's journey is going to kind of be a little bit different, but there's stuff you can do in your first year and your second year uh, that's going to be congruent with making yourself a competitive applicant. One of the first things that I go ahead and take off for freshmen is we all have this idea of graduating in exactly 4 years and then going right into med school in fifth year. And while people still do that, that's going to be the exception rather than the rule. It's not uncommon to take a gap year or two, to make because of the competitiveness of med school nowadays. It's one of the few things that med school doesn't scrutinize against. They want to know what you're doing during that gap year or two, but it's not only the norm now, but it's kind of expected. So what you can do early on is right out of the gate with your classes. We tell students, and I put my students through what does a competitive applicant look like on our website. Um, One of the first things is as far as extracurriculars, as far as shadowing, volunteering, all of that is important. But the very first thing that we tell students to do is establish a strong academic presence in your classes and in your major. Start off with a strong academic foothold. So if that means in your very first year of college, it's just going to tutoring. For example, at University of Houston, we have our Launch Tutoring Center. Launch also has something called academic coaching. So for students whose institutions have an academic coaching program, which is I describe it as how to college. They help answer questions on time management, motivation, concentration, all the stuff that affects a student, wherever they are academically, whether they be first-time freshmen or honors sophomores or anyone in between right there. But establishing a strong academic foothold is going to be first and foremost. And then on the other side of that, if you have a class go sideways on you, or if you have a semester go sideways on you, it's not the end of the world. That's a conversation you want to have with your academic advisor and with your health professions advisor as well. So first and foremost are grades. But then you get into those extracurriculars. Because after grades, which grades are important, I want to circle back to that. But you want to show consistency, longevity, and commitment to service and the stuff you're doing outside of the classroom. So not just hopping from one organization to another organization every semester or hopping from one community service thing to another community service thing every, month, but you want to show some staying power. What I typically recommend for students is giving an organization about 3 to 5 semesters and growing in that organization, taking on some leadership and some responsibility, and leaving it better than you found it. You still want to have a robust extracurricular portfolio, but you need some meat on the bone for each of those activities right in there. Uh, let's see. I think I got a little ahead of myself. First and foremost, grades.
Yes. Like as you mentioned with grades, I want to ask a little bit more of like during like the prereq courses you would need to take for med school and like the GPA, what would a typical range of GPA would look like for like the medical school in Texas?
Okay. So for that, the unofficial floor is going to be a 3.5 for your overall and for your science, or what we call your BCPM GPA. That stands for biology, chemistry, biochemistry, physics, and math. So the courses that constitute that. And then I remind students every attempt at those classes count. So if I have a C minus in my biochemistry, well, one, I don't meet the prerequisite. I have to have at least a C or higher in that biochemistry, since that's a named prerequisite in order to apply to med school. But both of those attempts, regardless of any freshman forgiveness or grade replacement an institution has, med school doesn't recognize that. Both of those attempts are going to go along for the ride on your overall GPA. Plus, since it's a BCPM class, just like genetics, just like general biology, both those attempts, the C minus and the, let's say I got a B plus in biochemistry. Both of those attempts are going to go on my BCPM GPA. So 3.5 is kind of where the minimum of where we need to be for a competitive application. But if you look at on the TMDSAS website, the Texas Medical and Dental School Application Service website, they have this bar graph I show to students where if I filter it to who got accepted, that's about a 40%. This past cycle was about a 40%, or the 22-23 cycle, I should say, about a 40% acceptance rate among competitive applicants. And if I were to just randomly pick out someone's GPA, they're packing about a 3.84 overall GPA. And again, this is every single class, every single attempt at a class from every single one of their institutions. And then their BCPM GPA, so all attempts at their anything with BIOL or CHEM or BCHS for biochemistry, that's going to average about a 3.78. But let's go ahead and round that up to a 3.8. Whenever you see the graph of who got accepted, about 40% of that, or excuse me, about 33% of that 40% of who got accepted is packing between the 3.8 and the 4.0 range right in there, if that makes any sense.
Yes. Additionally, I want to ask also, like, since we're on the topic of like score ranges, MCAT score, where would we like a stellar, like, applicant would have the score to?
Okay. So you definitely want to break a 510 and at least 125 on each of the four sections. That said, if I filter it down to on that same TMDSAS graph, if I filter it to who got accepted, it's about a 511.5. And each of those four areas, they're not dipping below a 127. Matter of fact, most of them are 128 and above. I think CARS runs a little bit lower. Critical analysis and reasoning skills, that eats everyone's lunch right there. That's just tough to study for, from what we've heard. So, but yeah, now the numbers don't guarantee acceptance either. Something I preface this with, while the GPA and the MCAT scores are crucial, there will be 4.0s who will not get into med school and 3.7s who will get into med school. Because again, they're going to be looking at everything. That's just the first kind of hurdle to jump. And once that hurdle's jumped, they would need to figure out, okay, these folks who are packing 3.5, 3.7, 4.0 in these MCAT scores, well, who are they? And that's where your extracurriculars come in.
So that really based off like, a holistically you as a student. Since we're on the topic of MCAT, I want to start off with like, student who are starting to study. What year are they should start studying in as like, if they should like prep as a freshman or while they're a sophomore or junior, even maybe a senior, or should they wait till after all their prereqs are taken?
I would say a good time to start studying for the MCAT would be after completion of Organic Chemistry 1, after completion of at least one physics, preferably both the physics, but at least one physics. And completion of the Gen Bios and the Gen Chems, that's going to go along with it if you've gotten to organic chemistry at that point. But assuming both Gen Bios and Gen Chems are done, completion of Organic Chemistry 1, completion of at least one, but preferably both of the physics, and then at least concurrent enrollment in the biochemistry. And then if you can throw in something like genetics or human physiology in there as well, because they, to a varying degree, do make an appearance on the MCAT. That at least gives you some sort of context as far as like how to best utilize those study materials. Sometimes I have to remind my freshmen, we're not going to answer any MCAT questions, for my first time freshmen, whenever I have them in the meeting, because I let them know it'd be like if a 10th grader asked you about, hey, should I start studying for the MCAT? You're going to tell that 10th grader, nah, learn to drive first, and then you got some other stuff to take care of right there. Um, for example, if I tried to study for the MCAT right now, I only went through Gen Bio and Gen Chemistry. I pieced out a pre-med. Chemistry was not for me. We were not getting along. But if I tried to study for the MCAT for fun, I never set foot in organic chemistry or biochemistry. All of that material might as well be written in Greek to me. I'm not going to make heads or tails of it because I never took the class. I don't have that foundation for it yet. So that's where you would get the most out of your study materials. Completing OChem 1 and at least one of your physics, and then concurrent enrollment in the biochemistry. That's when you can start looking at those MCAT study materials and really get a good context of, how to best utilize that. Now, for the MCAT, you want to dedicate at least 3 to 4 months of studying with upwards of 6 or 7 of those full-length practice tests. A lot of students in school, it used to be called the STAR test. I don't know if it is now. It was called something else back in my day. I had a little old person moment there. But anyway, back in the day, they were lobbing those practice tests at the students. And they still do it now. That way on game day, whenever, you take it for real and it counts towards the district, that student's comfortable with the format of the test and they can concentrate on the content of the material on the days when it counts. Because the number of times you take the MCAT does get scrutinized. The MCAT is something a student should only take once, maybe twice. Too many attempts on the MCAT are going to ring the wrong bells, so to speak. So since that's getting scrutinized, we tell students don't rush to take the MCAT. The name of the game isn't getting everything done, whether they be prerequisites or the MCAT test. Name of the game isn't getting everything done by a certain time. It's getting everything done that puts you in the best position to be on the good side of that 40% acceptance rate right there.
That's really good because like how I'm actually starting to study for MCAT as well, since I finished Orgo, I finished physics 1 and 2 this summer. So I had a lot of review during of the material. I'm really nervous as of how it will go because we're like as a student, I'm taking classes, I'm taking organic 2 and biochem while studying
Mm.
for the MCAT because I feel like while I'm like looking at biochem, it will help me like review a lot of material over the MCAT. The only one I'm scared for is the car section.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so I'm just reviewing. I'm actually gonna do my full length studying in the spring because that will give me a little more space. But right now I'm doing the mostly content review. As for outside of academic, I want to touch a little more about gaining like that experience into Medfield, letting when you're going interview, letting them know like I really want to do this and I've actually have some experience doing this. How would you tell a student like they are looking for the experience? When would they start like, clinical or volunteering or even research and how to like reach out for that research?
Now you can start at any time. There are some freshmen, and I'll tell them like if you feel like you've got a strong academic foothold, if those midterms are going well, and you already know how to study, you can start as early as first year. But again, going back to the whole most important thing is grades in your first year, establishing a strong academic foothold. But after that, once a student has that strong academic foothold, they can start, shadowing whenever they want. They can start doing clinicals whenever they want. Now, all of that is student initiated. We don't have any like placement programs for shadows or clinicals here. So that's all on the student. And I warn them, shadowing, it's a little like fishing. You gotta, just put your lines out there. You're gonna get some no's, you're gonna get some non-responses. And I let students know for an email, if it hadn't gotten responded to in like 3 to 5 weeks, just go ahead and top it off with another email just to check in, see if they have any shadowing opportunities open. Because sometimes people are just on vacation, or sometimes their emails get buried, and that happens. I suggest for students to email rather than call, just because if they're calling a doctor's office, they're not going to be speaking to the doctor. They might not be speaking to the office manager. They're going to be speaking to some 20-year-old front desk person who's just trying to get through their shift. There's someone griping about, why do I have to show my insurance card every time? Someone else is trying to reschedule their appointment. So they don't know you over the phone, so they don't want to commit their boss who signs their checks to having someone follow them around for 8 hours or 30 hours or 15 hours or however long that person plans to shadow. So I tell students, you're going to want to email, that way that office manager or that doctor, has time to really sit down and read your email. Something nice and concise, something maybe 5 to 6 sentences. Sometimes we even get those emails like, let me tell you about my academic journey. And it's a long email, but I can't do those in between appointments. So I save those for 4 o'clock whenever my appointments are done. But those little bite-sized emails I can do in between appointments. So something about 5 to 7 sentences, just saying who you are and everything like that. That way that doctor, that office manager has time to really see it and make a decision. If I tell students, if you can't find the excuse me, I'm kind of losing my voice too, so I'm gonna see if I can power through it. Uh, if you can't find the email of the doctor's office, hospital, clinic, that's on there and you got to call, keep that conversation about 20 to 40 seconds. That front desk person is busy, just long enough to get, a suitable contact email. That's going to be a lower hurdle for that person to jump right there. That's going to be, less intrusive, for their boss, just to get information right there. So that would be kind of your way in.
Like how you mentioned it is really about the taking the initiative on your own and reaching out. Um,
Absolutely.
I think like doing the emails would really be something more everyone, like all of us, are a little more comfortable with. Um, with that, I also want to mention how you like talk about like being in an organization, because I know when I first did my first orientation with you, that was the first thing you told me, and that's where I got right into AED. And you mentioned how we should stay there for a while and like advance in it. And can you touch a little more on that?
Yeah, I'm going to use the analogy I think I used with you, but I'm going to see if I can like not violate copyright law. So I'm going to let your listeners read between the lines on these. So we focus on consistency, longevity, and commitment to service. So what that doesn't look like is there was a TV show in like the early to mid 2010s or something like that. Maybe it was on a channel with mouse ears, who knows? But one of the characters, because they worked at a mall or something like that, they'd come in at the beginning of the episode. Guess who's working at a hot dog stand? Guess who's working at, uh, this bakery place in the mall? And then by the end of the episode, they either get fired or quit or forgot they were working there. Beginning in the next episode, they had a brand new job at the mall. So that person was not showing consistency, longevity, or commitment to service. Med schools, like I said, scrutinize everything. They know when a student's trying to pad their resume. So if they got a million jobs or a million activities, but not a lot of what we say meat on the bone right there, where they're just in it for a month or a week or 47 minutes, that's going to raise the wrong flags right there. Because they know a student's just trying to pad. So like I said, you still want a robust extracurricular portfolio, but that's where we put in about 3 to 5 semesters of work right there. And move up in the organization. Maybe after the first year, take on a leadership role. Uh, an official leadership role is good, something elected, doesn't have to be president, it could be treasurer, it could be historian or whatever. For an unofficial leadership role, a fundraising chair, something like that, where that organization is relying on you to get results. And that's something that you can put on your application right there. And then with regards to volunteering organizations, taking on more responsibility. Maybe you supervise new people coming in. Maybe you're working more with administration in addition to that boots on the ground aspect of whatever community service, whether that be medical or non-medical. The community service doesn't have to be medical. It could be Habitat for Humanity. It could be Katie Food Pantry. something like that where you're helping out the community at large, not just, working for free. But really putting in the work outside of the classroom as well. And then for student organizations, the same deal. I typically recommend let's have at least one health professions organization like AED, and then one community service organization, and then one extra one. It could be a religious organization, it could be another student organization, it could be a community organization, just something outside of the classroom that, shows who we are outside of that.
Oh, thank you so much for those wonderful like tips and details. I want to mention here that joining like AED, Alpha Epsilon Delta, like we are the largest pre-medical organization on campus. Oh, Mr. Robert mentioned that you should have volunteering hours. Well, we do a lot of community work on the weekends where we do food bank and beacon where we volunteer to help the homeless shelters. We also do animal shelters, and during weekdays we do workshop where you connect to doctors. Our GBMs, we bring in doctors where you could, if you're scared to reach out for those emails and doing those calls, you could also meet them there, reach them in person, and network that way. And we
Mhm.
also have a program where med students are there. Maybe they could connect you with a doctor, or they could be a mentor to you for your journey. As well as I'm the reporter for AD, and we do medical brigade abroad. This year we went to Costa Rica. That was clinical hours and shadowing and volunteering all together in one. Next year we are going to a very special location that will be Vietnam. So I'm really, really excited to bring that tour to our members and everyone who's interested in the med field. Even if you're not pre-med and you're pre-PA, pre-dental, or just pre-health in general, go ahead and sign up because you never know what this journey could bring you to and the opportunity it will give you. Before we wrap up, do you have any final advice to our listener who are working on the medical school roadmap?
Yes, so I'll I'll see if I can get this all in one lump sum here. So, as far as on well, at least on our health professions website, where it goes into what does a competitive student look like, just taking a look at those for the employment aspect, that does not have to be medical based. Some students can't do that because they already have other job obligations. Now, I do recommend if you're a regular full-time student, don't work above 20 hours if you can help it. Research shows, now this research, I don't know how old this is, it's been a minute, but after the 20-hour mark, there's a sharp decline in academic performance. And yeah, while being active outside of the classroom is important, yeah, first and foremost is going to be those grades. But it doesn't have to be particularly medical based. Or people who work at restaurants or grocery stores, stuff like that. And there's going to be those crossover attributes with regards to being dependable, being reliable, working in a team with different personalities, de-escalating customer conflict, and all those real world attributes that are going to be essential for you in the medical field. Because, once upon one day, that person's going to be in the medical field, and they're going to have to show that professionalism. They're going to have to, de-escalate conflict because you're seeing people on maybe not their best day. And but you're the one in the white coat, you got to be a professional. And then with oh, excuse me. And then with regards to research, research uh, isn't a straight up requirement. That said, if you have a chance to do undergraduate research, totally go for it. Now, sometimes that can be a heavy time commitment. Sometimes they want you in the lab something like 20 hours a week. So it's sort of like a full-time job. But something clinical based or particularly laboratory based, something like a wet lab, for example, to show that scientific prowess outside of an academic setting and in more of an applied setting. That's going to be essential for, not only showing that prowess, but if a student's going towards a medical school that really values research, and that's something that gets brought up in secondaries sometimes. You want to make sure you have a strong research background. Now, we tell students only do research if you have the time to commit to it, because you're already having to do the shadowing and the community service and study for the MCAT. So you want to be careful about overextending yourself. But if you're looking at a school that has a heavy research component or looking into an MD PhD program, research is absolutely going to be essential. Now for shadowing, oh,
But
go ahead.
you mentioned like for those, these days gap years or like the norm and it's like everybody take a gap year. Would this be a good time to like, push in that research?
I would say it would be a good time to continue it. You want a little bit of everything done before you apply, so that way, once that application is coming across in TMDSAS, they have like a full, repertoire of what you're bringing in and everything like that. And then for your planned activities, that's where you can say, well, I'm going to continue some research, I'm going to continue shadowing, but you already have that research going on, or you already have uh, a robust amount of shadowing hours right in there. So, or for some gap years, that's where people do a post-bac or a specialized master's degree. Something in a STEM field, such particularly biology, biochemistry, or chemistry, something like that. Um, Let me see. There was something else. Another thing students can work on, and they don't have to wait on this, but it's still crucial. Go to the career center at their school and sign up for to practice mock interviews. Because a lot of candidates, they look good on paper, but they get to the interview, and that's something I still struggle with. Like, uh, well, you can probably tell I'm not really a radio person, so
All right. I'm
but
really
see, I didn't practice. But if I
nervous.
would have gone to the career center and practiced maybe mock interviews, it might be a little bit smoother going on. But yeah, that's another aspect to the application right there. Once you score an interview, you want to make sure you're knocking it out of the park with that interview. Not only doing the research on, the questions on, what they asked about in your secondary applications, and what typical interview questions are, but making sure you're smooth with your responses and you're meaningful with your responses as well.
One last thing I do want to touch on because you mentioned the interview. Um, it's the personal statement.
Hmm.
No, that's also something that's really big on our application process as well. Typically, what would a personal statement look like, what it is, how to craft one, and when to start crafting one?
That's a good question. So I typically recommend students start on that at least a semester and a half before they're applying. So you want to apply early in the cycle because a lot of med schools have rolling admissions. So let's call that June, for example. So if you're going to apply in June, you want to, at the very least, start working on your personal statement, start crafting that, about a semester and a half. So about after Halloween. Um, and you want to get with your writing center and University of Houston, the career services also takes a look at personal statements. It's not uncommon to go through 4 or 5 different drafts, not necessarily complete rewrites, but different drafts of a personal statement. And I tell students, no matter what your GPA is, no matter what your MCAT score is, you are 100% in control of what those admissions folks are reading about you because you get to craft it. As far as what the personal statement should concentrate on, it's why you want to be a doctor, what's your interest in medical school, what makes you a competitive applicant for medical school. You don't have to craft it to a specific program. As a matter of fact, if you're applying to different programs, you want to craft it as far as like what makes you a good candidate for medical school, why do you want to be a doctor, and all of that. Now, real important, you want to actually answer the prompt. Two of the biggest things we get feedback on are students, not answering the prompt on the personal statement. The prompt might be something as simple as, why do you want to be a doctor? It has a tendency to change every so often. But why do you want to be a doctor? Something as simple as that. Student writes a really good really good personal statement. Doesn't actually answer the question of the prompt why they want to be a doctor. So answering the prompt, you don't want to go force for the trees on that one. So actually answering the prompt and then sometimes too much storytelling. Now, you want to let them know who you are and what your academic journey looked like and everything like that. The personal statement is a culmination of everything you've done up to this point, your research, your shadowing, um, things that have stuck out in particularly outside of the classroom. Inside of the classroom, they're going to look at they're already going to see the grades and the transcripts and the GPAs and everything like that. But something called meaningful experiences. And feel free to internet search that meaningful experiences med school personal statement application. It's those aha moments where it's like, wow, I'm glad I saw this. I'm glad I observed this. This is why I want to be a doctor. And you expand on that in your personal statement. And again, going to your university's writing center uh, or career services for help on those drafts of personal statements.
Well, for me, when you mentioned that aha moment was, I think, after we went abroad to a brigade and we were helping patient, I was like, oh wow, I really like I want to do this, even if I don't get to like, be a doctor. I still want to be in this field. And when I came back here, the first thing I did was start looking for a job that I could provide that service to other people.
Mhm.
And I think maybe that's something that would be the aha moment for me on my application. And you mentioned more it's about holistically who you are as a person. Unless, because for the stat, they can look at your grade, they can look at your MCAT score, and they will be able to see how you did in school. I think this is the personal statement will be something like delve into like who you are, what you did outside of school, like volunteering, and how did you get to where you are right now. And just a little
Absolutely.
more of like personality wise, because I think like with writing, I'm a little more like of very like straight like forward person, kind of bubbly. Maybe they could see your personality and it will match into their program a little more. These were like super incredible advice and like these like very wise words coming from you. Thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Robert, as well
Yeah.
as like sharing all your wonderful insight. It's so helpful and it's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me, and wish all of y'all the best of luck. And yeah, if you have any questions, uh, hit up your university's health professions advisor for you. That would be me and my boss. So
Yes.
you let us know.
I will put a like link below. Mr. Robert here is a at the University of Houston. He is the medical advisor. So go ahead and schedule a meeting with him. My first meeting with him was what brought me here today, and I'm so thankful because he was so helpful, so genuine, and so sweet. I think it will be a more amazing for you to have a personalized conversation with him in person. As for to our listeners, we hope to have like found today's episode very helpful. If you have any question or topic you'd like for us to discuss in the future, please leave it in the comment below and reach out to AED. Our website will be linked in the description as well. If you haven't already done so, check out our first episode, useful strategies while taking the MCAT with two students that are applying right now. And until next time, keep studying, stay motivated, and sincerely from your reporter, Melody Tran. Thank you so much.
Good one.